what was your reaction? What was the reaction of this building?
Matt, it's really not appropriate for me to be offering any commentary on something like a debate from up here, and I think you've been covering the State Department long enough to know
but
that.
The question's got to be asked.
I appreciate you asking it, I guess, but I'm going to politely. I'm going to Matt. I do appreciate. I do appreciate any question you ask, but I will politely.
Is a much overused word.
You've always said that you were against all displacement of populations, and poor Palestinians have been going up, down, east, west, and now again they had just fled. Now they came back. Now they have to leave again. What do you make of those orders today?
So, of course, Leon, when it comes to one of our key tenets of this conflict, the Secretary was very clear in Tokyo that there can be no permanent displacement of Gazans. Of course, over the course of this military operation that the IDF is conducting. I want to come back to Kylie real quick because I did not mean to be so flippant in moving on. I was just trying to work the room. Good afternoon, everybody. I don't have anything off the top, Matt, so if you want to kick us off.
Nothing off the top at all.
Nothing off the top.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just start with the situation in the Middle East. And what's your understanding of where things stand at the moment?
Well, Matt, we continue to work closely with partners in Egypt and Qatar. Our understanding is that they are still pressing their Hamas interlocutors to see that any gaps that exist as it relates to the ceasefire deal that we've been talking about for so long, that there might be ways to close that gap, and we're still hopeful, and we're watching that space very closely. The President and the Secretary were clear when they laid this out. We believe that this three-phase ceasefire proposal that Israel has made to Hamas and that the UN Security Council has endorsed is the best way to end the violence in Gaza and ultimately end the conflict. And we're continuing to push to try and close this deal. Right,
but you've seen the latest from Hamas that they don't, that it's not good enough, right?
Matt, I'm not going to get into the ins and outs.
I'm not asking you to get into it. Have you seen it?
I'm not aware of a recent proposal or a communication from Hamas aside from the one a number of weeks ago. But again, I'm not going to negotiate or get into the back and forth on this publicly. What I will just say, and again, is that our viewpoint is that the time for haggling is over and it's time for a ceasefire. We and our partners agree that the deal it has to be grounded in the principles of the ceasefire proposal that the entire international community already supports. And Hamas has previously agreed to similar iterations of this proposal, so they need to sign on to the version that was shared in front of them.
Okay. And then last one, just on the north, Israel's north, Lebanon's south.
Yeah.
What's your current concern about the possibility of a broader conflict there?
So I don't have a prognosis to offer, Matt, but restoring the calm along the blue line, it continues to remain a top priority for us, and it must be of utmost importance to Lebanon and Israel as well. We continue to be concerned by the level of violence, and we're continuing to work towards a diplomatic solution that would allow Israeli and Lebanese citizens to return their homes and live in peace and security. When the president laid out that ceasefire that we were just talking about, Matt, he said in his remarks that a ceasefire and a hostage deal in Gaza will accelerate the possibility of progress, including lasting security among Israel's northern border with Lebanon. And so that's something we're going to continue to work towards.
Thank you.
Leon.
Yeah, just to follow up on Gaza, what do you make of the evacuation orders, again, that were released today in Khan Yunis and Rafah? You've always said that you were against all displacement of populations, and poor Palestinians have been going up, down, east, west, and now again they had just fled. Now they came back. Now they have to leave again. What do you make of those orders today?
So, of course, Leon, when it comes to one of our key tenets of this conflict, the Secretary was very clear in Tokyo that there can be no permanent displacement of Gazans. Of course, over the course of this military operation that the IDF is conducting, and I will let them speak to specific logistical parameters, as those operations are being conducted, it is of course pertinent that civilians and non-militants be asked to appropriately evacuate for safety concerns. But again, these are all logistical parameters that the IDF can speak to. When it comes to the tenant of how we've been talking about Rafah, there has been no change in our policy. We continue to believe that any major military incursion into Rafah we would be opposed to, but yet we have yet to see any kind of incursion to take place thus far. Camilla.
Thank you, Vedant. Just back to Lebanon, we've seen a couple of alerts go out from U.S. Embassy Beirut over the last few days, and the most recent today was one about flight restrictions. Can you just give us a little bit more detail at all on or any kind of insight into possible preparations for Americans as things continue to be very tense on the border there? I know that you can't get into too much detail, but what can we expect in terms of the kind of options that state has to help Americans if need be and needs to pivot there last minute?
So let me say a couple things. First, for those who may not be tracking, the country of Lebanon as a whole currently is at the travel advisory warning level of level 3, reconsider travel. But the specific region of southern Lebanon is at a level 4. It's at a level 4 do not travel level, as is Lebanon's border with Syria, as well as refugee settlements throughout Lebanon. We undertake this kind of work and planning at all of our first, let me say that when it comes to our travel advisory warnings, we make those assessments and changes based on circumstances on the ground, and we'll continue to assess what situations are like should there need to be any kind of change in travel advisory warning. When it comes to supporting American citizens, we have no higher priority than the safety and security of U.S. citizens overseas. And in many countries, the security environment remains complex and can change quickly. Any citizen traveling abroad anywhere, our message to them has always been that they should enroll in Smart Traveler to be best informed about any communication from the U.S. government. We also encourage that in Lebanon that U.S. citizens have their own departure plans in place, and we don't have any announcement to make on any evacuation of private citizens from Lebanon. But what I can say is that the U.S. government remains diligent in planning and preparing for any and all possible emergency contingencies. And this is work that happens not just in Lebanon, but at all of our diplomatic facilities, at our embassies and consulates around the world. This is what we do, and it's part of our contingency planning. But I wouldn't speak to any more specifics beyond that.
And just given that these alerts have gone out in the last few days or within a week, do we read that as there has been an escalation in the past few days, or is this just a culmination of
this is the State Department and the U.S. government wanting to offer American citizens in the country and in the region, and those who may have loved ones in the country and the region, to have the most informed information as possible and have the best avenues to stay in touch with the U.S. government. Nick.
Different region, but somewhat related.
Can I see if anybody else has anything else? Then I will come back to you. Simon, did you have?
No on this region.
Okay. Kylie, go ahead.
It was reported over the weekend that the U.S. proposed new language to bridge the gaps. You were saying you've been working to bridge the gaps between Hamas and Israel for a hostage release and ceasefire. Can you share with us if that new proposal was signed off on by Israel before the U.S. put it forth, or did you guys share it with both sides, like just where that stands at this moment?
So I'm not going to get into the specifics of where we are in our conversations with Israel and other regional partners. I will leave it at what I said to Matt, that our partners in Qatar and Egypt continue to press Hamas interlocutors on ways to close this gap. The president, the secretary have all been engaged on this directly, and we continue to feel strongly that the ceasefire proposal that the president laid out a number of weeks ago continues to be the best way to get a surge in humanitarian assistance, release all the remaining hostages, and perhaps most importantly, get us on a path to greater and broader diplomatic conversations that has the potential to get this region out of these countless cycles of violence that we've been experiencing.
So no time frame for expectations as to when they.
No, I wouldn't
might
speak
get
to
back.
timeframes with the specifics of the deliberations from up here.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Vedant. Secretary Blinken today at Brookings stressed again the need for a plan for the day after, and without it, it will be chaos and he's also said that there's three things that the U.S. will not accept: Israeli occupation, Hamas getting back to power, or chaos. But what we hear from the Israeli government all the time, that they are not ready yet to discuss such plans, and they don't want this Gaza Strip to be ruled by Hamas or even the PLO. And we know that you've been stated many times, you or Matt, that you are stressing the Israelis and keep talking with them about this. Did you reach anywhere with them? Are they gonna talk to you about their future plans for the day after?
So we have stressed the importance of there being some plans for the day after. This is nothing new. This is something that the Secretary has been engaged on for a number of months now, and has been a key piece of the shuttle diplomacy that he's been engaged on in the region. It's not for me to speak to the Israelis or to the foreign policy and the policies that they're interested in pursuing, but what I can say from our perspective is that in every conversation that we've had with our partners in Israel and other regional partners, we have stressed the principles that the Secretary laid out in Tokyo last fall, and part of that we have stressed that there is a responsibility to have a plan for a day after to ensure that these things can come to fruition, that Hamas can no longer use Gaza as a springboard for terrorism on the Israeli people, that Israel can no longer be an occupying power for Gaza, that there we get us on a path to a diplomatic solution, and get us on a path to two states that have equal measures of integrity and security for Israelis and Palestinians. And these are conversations we'll continue to have.
But are they susceptible to this push? Because publicly they seems not.
It should come as no surprise that over the course of this conflict, we of course had policy disagreements and with our partners in Israel, but we'll continue to engage on these conversations. But we have stressed at every turn that there is a responsibility and a need to make sure that there is a plan for a day after. Michelle, go ahead.
Vedant, Arab League Assistant Secretary General has said during the weekend that the League's member states concurred that the labeling of Hezbollah as a terrorist organization should no longer be employed. Do you agree with the Arab League on this?
So I've seen those reports, Michelle, and we're looking into them, but let me just say unequivocally that there is no question that Hezbollah remains a dangerous terrorist organization and a destabilizing force in the Middle East. We believe that there is no reason to take steps to remove such a designation, and we have continued to urge governments around the world to designate, ban, or restrict Hezbollah. 16 governments from across the world have heeded this call since 2019, and we'll continue to have those conversations. But again, I just want to reiterate, in our point of view, Hezbollah remains a very dangerous terrorist organization.
Thank you.
Simon, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, just moving to a slightly separate subject.
Sure.
Just since this is the first briefing you've had since the debate on Thursday, there's obviously been a lot of responses over the president's performance. I know this isn't the White House, but I also want to note that the secretary doesn't have any events this week where we'll have a chance to ask him directly. So this is a forum to try and ask. And he was asked about this morning, not by a journalist, I should say, at Brookings Institution, about, globally there has been as well as domestically, there has been some response to the president's performance on the debate stage. It's raising some questions about his ability to lead, to respond to crises. From this building's point of view, is there anything you want to say in response to that?
I think Secretary Blinken laid out our point of view on this pretty clearly, and so I would just echo what he said. And to give just a snippet, the Secretary was pretty clear and succinct that the world and world leaders know the president. They know the policies that he pursues and he champions, and they like and believe in the policies that we're pursuing. Next week, the Washington area has the great opportunity to host NATO leaders for the 75th NATO summit, which I think will be another opportunity to talk about this administration's commitment to having a seat at a table, and this administration's commitment to showing that American engagement matters. And so we'll continue to have those conversations. But I will leave punditry and electioneering to others in DC.
Have you had any contacts from allies or other countries, expressing concern over this performance and asking to sort of for reassurance?
Again, I have no diplomatic conversations to speak to, but I will just echo again that world leaders know this president, and they know this is a president who has worked at the cross-section of foreign policy for decades, and they know and believe in the policies that he and this administration are pursuing.
Well, leaving aside the punditry and electioneering, what was your reaction? What was the reaction of this building?
Matt, it's really not appropriate for me to be offering any commentary on something like a debate from up here, and I think you've been covering the State Department long enough to know
but the
that.
question's got to be asked.
I appreciate you asking it, I guess, but I'm going to
you
politely.
don't appreciate
I'm going
me
to
asking.
no, Matt. I do appreciate.
I
do appreciate any question you ask, but I will politely.
Is a much overused word.
I will politely decline
Okay, fair
to
enough.
comment
But
on.
so to follow up on something, you've heard absolutely nothing. You're not aware of anything that any foreign government has said since Thursday night to you or to anyone you're not aware of about what happened.
That is correct.
Nothing.
Correct.
Okay.
One more question.
Go ahead.
And this building, have you guys given any guidance to your top diplomats who are serving in a political capacity because they've been picked by this president in terms of how they should be answering questions about if Biden will remain the nominee from their interlocutors overseas?
People who are employees of the State Department, whether they are Schedule C, whether they are a presidentially nominated person in that position, are well aware of what their roles and responsibilities are in speaking to domestic politics in any kind of official capacity.
So that's not a yes or a no.
Go ahead, Sam.
I have another question, but tagging onto the debate question, is it some concern in this building that not just a lot of the international community, but even former President Trump said that no, Israel is the one that's ensuring that the attack in Gaza continues? Is there some concern that there's going to be a broader consensus, contrary to the claims of the State Department, the administration, that Hamas is the holdup here?
I'm not sure I fully understand your question, Sam. What exactly are you asking?
Well, there was some substance in the debate, and
as there tend to be in presidential debates.
And Trump and Biden depicted Hamas as the lone holdout for preventing a stop to the fighting, and Trump said no, actually Israel is the holdout, and then he quickly added that. That it should continue to kill Palestinians. So although he took a very militaristic perspective, he actually acknowledged the underlying truth shared by a great deal of the international community that in fact it is Israel that is holding up a stop to the conflict. That must be a concern to you?
It is not. Any person on any particular debate stage is, of course, entitled to whatever opinion they want. When it comes to the current ongoing conflict in Gaza, we remain incredibly committed of continuing to work with partners in Qatar, partners in Egypt, partners in Israel to see what can be done to close the gap as it relates to the ceasefire proposal that the president laid out a number of weeks ago. We continue to believe that is the best path forward to get hostile hostages released, to get a surge of humanitarian aid into Gaza, and as well as to get us onto a path of diplomacy to have greater conversations for peace and stability in the region. I want to come back to
Biden
Kylie
recently-
real quick because
if I may?
I did not mean to be so flippant in moving on. I was just trying to work the room. So again, just to let me reiterate, we have not provided or provisioned any guidance from the State Department to talk about any issues as it relates to domestic politics outside of on an annual basis, bureaus within the State Department and through the interagency create materials to how to talk about elections in the democracy context, but not in a, the offering punditry or analysis. So again, I just want to reiterate that any person serving in any capacity, in an official capacity, whether they are a Foreign Service officer, a civil service officer, a Schedule C employee, or a Senate confirmed position, are well aware of what and whether they are ambassadors or not, are well aware of what is acceptable to talk about while wearing their official duties when they are representing the department in an official capacity. Nick.
You said you weren't aware of any particular foreign reaction to the debate, but the Polish foreign minister tweeted afterwards, among other things, with like a reference to the Roman Empire, it's important to manage one's ride into the sunset. So do you have any reaction to that? And then I've got a separate question.
You should ask the Polish foreign minister. I think I've exhaustively spoken to this political issue to the extent that I can. I really don't have any other commentary to offer.
Okay.
Well, I don't think you've spoken exhaustively about riding into the sunset.
That is true. That is true.
Can I just go back to the embassy question?
Sure.
In Europe, you said there's no change in operating status, but is there any change at all?
There is none.
Security status?
There's
There's
none.
none.
There is
So-
not.
So all embassies are open, there isn't like a heightened security?
Well, whether they're open or not, Matt, I'd have to go through a litany of lists. But to Nick's question, in linking it to the
Yeah.
status and posture,
Related to this,
correct?
there's no-
No,
there-
there's been no
there's no
change
change.
linked to that.
All right.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. Camilla.
Also related, just out of interest, with the reporting is that the U.S. military bases are on heightened alert and a pretty high level of alert. Some reporting saying the highest in 10 years. Is it normal for U.S. military bases to be put on such high alert and there to be no change in security status for embassies? Is that
Well, I think we go down a rabbit hole of whether military installations and diplomatic facilities are necessarily always in the exact same place or not, which isn't always the case. So
just as a precaution?
what I just don't want to get into hypotheticals. What I can say is that as it relates to our embassies and consulates, there is no change in operating status of missions that we have in the region. But when it comes to travel advisory warnings, when it comes to the safety and security of our citizens and our diplomats, when it comes to the operating status of our facilities, whether they are embassies or consulates, this is something that we closely monitor and evaluate, and it's something that we monitor and evaluate in real time, and we have the ability to adjust our security and operating postures accordingly. We have the ability to do that swiftly when necessary, but I just have no updates for you in any posture change on our end.
okay?